Welcome to the Be About It podcast. My name is Ben Mercedes, and I'll be your host. We'll cover financial and crypto markets, real estate, and entrepreneurship. My goal is to inspire others to be about it and take action. In episode 4, I chat with Joey DeFilippo, who has flipped 15 properties, and he's also acquired 5 out-of-state cash-flowing rentals, all while working a high-level full-time job. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. But yeah, Joey, thank you so much for joining me for the podcast. Why don't you explain, what you do and who you are?
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure to be on. And my name's Joey DeFilippo. We've been friends now for,
Handful of years.
10 years, maybe. Yeah. We've known each other, and I've appreciated just getting to know you more and talking business with you.
Yeah, it's been good.
I started my real estate side career back in 2011. So I owned a Homevestors franchise.
Mm-hmm. What is that?
We Buy Ugly Houses.
There we go.
Everybody's seen those signs.
Yeah.
So yeah, we threw down 10 grand and we bought a franchise. It was called an associate franchise. There's higher fees with the associate, but you needed I think it was 50 grand to get a full franchise. And then there were just less fees on your flips.
Gotcha.
So we did our first few flips in that franchise. I brought in partners. So that was good at the time because, man, I didn't know much about real estate.
Mm-hmm. How old were you at the time?
So I was 26, 27.
Okay.
We didn't have any kids. I was gung-ho on doing it. I think also there's some factors that go into how on board is your spouse? Is she ready to go? So we kind of had to figure that all out as we were going, but I was just gung-ho on getting a deal. Finding that first deal is the hardest, right?
Yeah.
Finding that deal that you get at a discount. I think everybody who starts in real estate thinks they'll never find that first deal where you actually have a seller be like, I'm going to sell this house to you at a discount.
Right.
And you're able to negotiate it to a point where you're comfortable. And I'm pretty conservative in nature. My dad is a super penny pincher. And he's a good thinker, but he doesn't take any action. So I feel like my mom was the one that had that action oriented mindset that I don't think I would ever have been an entrepreneur if it weren't for her.
Right.
And that influence that she was like, you can do it, you can figure it out. So that was always my mentality, figure the stuff out as you go, just get the deal lined up, make it happen. Don't overthink it. So we scored a deal on the South Shore, and we bought this house for, I think, 120 grand. We knew fixed up.
What year was it at this point?
So we're talking 2011.
Okay. So the crash just happened. And everyth's dirt cheap. And everything's kind of coming up a little bit at that point.
Everybody's scared of real estate. Mm-hmm. Everybody's kind of, a little shy on the trigger, pulling, because they don't know if something's going to happen again. We weren't sure. So we got 4 partners. So there's 4 of us that own this business. So there's a broker. There's a contractor. There's me. I'm the finance guy. So I'm the guy.
Perfect team.
Yep.
That's a perfect team.
And then we got a sales guy that's just great with people.
Yeah.
I learned a ton from him. And as we get into my story, I eventually left that franchise, started my own deal, and had to do all of those aspects together. And so without having that existing framework and those people that I worked with and those deals that I was able to do and that confidence level that I was able to get to doing deals, that is so important, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's imperative, because if you're not sure, or if you start questioning things too much, you're not going to make it in that business. You're just not.
I think that's a good way to get in with minimal risk, where and I've heard it before, find a contractor, find an electrician, find a plumber. That way, you're handling your expertise of numbers. They're handling their expertise of, repairs and upgrades and those kind of things.
Absolutely.
Versus, fresh out of the gate, your first property, you're handling everything. You're overseeing general contractors. There's obviously more risk there on, the day-to-day operations.
Yeah, you're spot on, man. Yeah. I mean, I think that was important for me at the time. Some guys can start it all and figure it out.
Yeah.
We were in the middle of having our first baby. I had a full-time job. So anytime I've done this, it's always been with a full-time job on the side. And I've always tried to build in flexibility, whatever W-2 job I'm at. I'm working on my side gig. Sometimes things are going well at my W-2 and maybe I'm focusing a little bit more on that. But when things are in the lull, man, I was always like pioneering into real estate and trying to figure out how to get a deal.
Yeah.
So I think the hardest part about the first deal, right, is you're spending money on advertising. I remember it was $1,000 a month we were spending on advertising. And that doesn't sound like a lot to me now. And that's nothing. But at that time,
it's a big number. Yeah.
I remember waking up every morning thinking, I'm spending $1,000 every time this phone rings. Like this is a $250 phone call. Like I got to make this work.
Yeah.
A lot of them are duds. A lot of people are just tire kickers and they're like, what can you give me for my house? Like, I forget you. I'm just going to go with a real estate agent. So working through those emotions was huge to get you to the point where, you can actually close a deal, because people feel that too, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking to somebody on the phone, they know if you're skittish.
Yeah.
Like, and we're just trying to provide value. And if you can emphasize that with people and people feel that and people don't feel like you're taking advantage of them, and ultimately we're not, we're just looking for that right deal. And really that's like 5% of the people you talk to that we're a good fit for. Yeah. If you're really going to buy deals right. So I've seen a lot of people not buy deals right. And you know how far they get? They get one deal and then they're done.
Yeah.
Because you can lose a lot of money in real estate too.
Absolutely.
I mean, you buy a doozy and you're toast. Like, especially my limited capital at the time, like I'm no trust fund kid. Baby. Like I didn't have that money. This was all earned. We were just,
what were you doing for work at that time?
So I've always worked in accounting and finance. I was working for a PR firm, doing their finance and analysis.
Gotcha.
And then in between that, I actually moved jobs and I worked for a technology company, publicly traded technology company. And I worked in their SaaS group, which is
nice, software as a
service, which is huge now. So I have that background.
Yeah. So you were just doing that, contributing to your 401k, stacking cash on the side, and studying real estate to then make a move.
Absolutely. So about 5 years before that, I went and got a real estate license, which just lets you have access to the MLS, lets you make offers on your own house. The first house I bought, I got the commission on it. So I got like 2.5% on it.
Sweet.
So it paid itself off like 100 times fold, right, over the course of buying houses from then till now. But it's been it's been a journey, and that $1,000 a month was hard to part with. But, I feel like that's where most people stop. A lot of people stop. I've seen a lot of people stop at that point because we were doing that for 6 months, and guess what? We didn't have a deal.
No deals, yeah.
And that hurts. You're thinking $6,000, I just wasted. What if I close up shop? I'm 10 grand in for the franchise. I'm 6 grand down on the advertising. I've got maybe 20 grand in the bank, and I'm feeling like, gosh, I'm going to destroy my future if I can't make this happen. Yeah. So a lot of stress, a lot of waking up.
What's that pressure like? It's just day in and day out.
It was hard, man. I remember waking up and thinking, I can't believe we just spent another $1,000 for advertising this month. Yeah. And we managed that by phone, right? It was actually a flip phone. So we're going back in time here. 2011 flip phones weren't that uncommon, right? We had what we called the bat phone. And anytime that thing rang, I was at work, I picked that thing up.
And get it, yeah.
And, that if I were to look back on some of those conversations I had, I probably lost deals because I just wasn't skilled enough in making the deal happen, the art of the deal. Yeah. I don't know if you ever read Trump's book, The Art of the Deal.
You need to. I keep hearing about it.
But I started reading so many sales books, right? And I started practicing, man. A lot of those skills didn't come to me naturally. I had to figure them out. And I think that's the case for a lot of entrepreneurs, man. They're not smart. I certainly wasn't the top of my class. I was an average C+, B-
Sounds
student.
Like me. More like C-, but yeah.
But I think what sets us apart, and maybe you can talk to me a little bit about how you've, worked through your business, but I feel like it's this unwillingness to let go. It's like this persistence.
It's like this
grit and
persistence
to itness. And I've seen so many smart people who don't have that. Yeah. And I mean, I love it, right? That's the other part. You got to love it. You really got to be passionate about it. You got to believe in it, and you got to make it happen. So that first deal we did, we made 90 grand on it. And
total.
It was scary. It was scary. It was the first deal. These guys were like 10 years my senior, right? So some of these guys were looking at me and they're like, who is this 27-year-old finance guy? One of the guys really didn't like me at all. And that led to a whole thing happening. And that's why we eventually left the franchise and we sold off our piece of the business to them. And then we started our own LLC.
Yeah.
But, man, that was nice to get that payday though. That payday after a year and a half of owning the franchise, we finally had that payday. And man, on that payday, man, I think I put on my playlist, Take Your Money and Run. And I just remember feeling the exuberance of having accomplished what I thought at different times might never happen. And once that first deal happens for you as a real estate investor, like you get so much confidence and it allows you to then think about opportunity and future. And it makes you such a better buyer too. The next time you're on the phone with somebody and you're trying to negotiate a deal with them, dude, you're on fire. And they call that, it's called something in the home investors realm where it's like you just become a better buyer. And usually that second deal comes a lot easier. And it certainly did. So we got a second deal within a couple months and then a third deal.
Sweet.
The second deal we did, actually it was the third deal we did that we didn't make very much money on.
Before we get there, let's talk about, you mentioned setting up your own LLC. So what is an LLC? And then why would you set that up for, like, what are the benefits?
So a limited liability company is just it's a separate entity. So it does not have your social security number associated with it. Like we were talking about earlier, you've got a sole proprietor that's tied to your social security number.
Right.
If somebody wanted to sue you, there would be no veil.
Yeah.
And they could come here and they could take your house or whatever.
Right.
Like the chances of that happening are slim.
Sure.
LLC protects you legally. If someone comes after you, you have the LLC creating a veil, and it's called piercing the corporate veil if they ever want to try to get to you.
Right.
The only way that someone can pierce that corporate veil is if they prove in court that you were doing something not in line with the LLC. So there's certain rules you have to follow. I have to fill out paperwork every year. My wife's, I usually just hand the paper to my wife and it's like, hey, we just had an annual meeting. Like there's all these little checklists you have to do. And there's Massachusetts, $500 a year you have to pay in order to stay within that LLC. I've got a separate mailbox that I set up for the LLC. So there's all kinds of, it basically produces anonymity for you. I mean, people could go look up who owns the LLC, but it just creates that structure that you need. Well, a lot of people end up buying rentals in LLCs for that same protection.
Gotcha. And so each property you take on, new LLC?
So same LLC. A lot of people who do use LLCs for that purpose, like Scott Goddard, our friend, like he every land purchase he buys, he creates a new LLC for it, and he stores it in there, and then that again provides him with the protection. You can also get a lot of financing through LLC. Again, not going to be associated at all with your credit score. Not going to run into your numbers for ratios that you need to buy a house. But it will be another income stream that can show on your taxes that, you've got this other business that's going on and it's providing you income. And all these, like you talked about putting a vehicle in an LLC. So when I purchased a truck a few years ago, I bought that through the LLC, and there's just tremendous discounts for that. I mean, you can look up on YouTube what kind of benefits you can get from LLCs. There's just so much you can do. Every traveling trip I went to go look for rentals, so I've got rentals in Florida, Indianapolis, Alabama, like all of those are funneled through the LLC, and all those costs go through the LLC.
Right. Awesome. So it's a layer of protection. And it also just helps you personally from like a tax strategy.
Yeah.
Right.
Tax strategy of the wealthy, baby.
Yeah. I had that conversation with my buddy Anthony, and he's like, he has eight units, 30 doors, 11 garages, and he's like, every year I do my taxes and I'm learning new things and I'm learning how to leverage new things, and it's just like this whole game is constructed to be almost like taken advantage of. Like there are so many breaks and benefits and just advantages that you get when you really learn the secrets of LLCs and S corps and leveraging. I'm talking about refinancing my house, and my mortgage broker is like, Brian Ambrose, check him out if you need a mortgage. But he's like, why don't you take your vehicle expenses and pay them through your business account? And when we're running your numbers for a new house, you won't have your debt to income ratio will be lower. And I'm just like, that's genius.
Smart, man. So you got to bring people around you like that. Like, you got to find advisors and people that know stuff, because as much as it's your own stick-to-itness as an entrepreneur to make things happen, one of the things I've found is you got to bring around the talent and the legal and the accounting people. So even though I'm in accounting and finance, I still have tax advisors, because those guys work in a field that's, how do you pay the government the least amount in taxes? And man, if you go back to the genesis of LLCs, I mean, it just goes back to the liberty of this country and how we were set up to be a capitalist society. And guess what? It works really well. It works well because people are motivated to make money, and people are motivated to not pay taxes. And when you have that ability, you're going to add value. And I know there's a lot of millennials or maybe Gen Zs out there who are like, oh, you're just some rich dude. I'm not rich. There's some rich people out there who have LLCs too. But guess what, man? Most of the people that I know had to work for it. They had to figure it out. But having that ability to, make money is going to drive you to create value for people. I got hugged by so many neighbors for flipping houses next to them, because they're like, dude, this has been an ugly house in my neighborhood for years. Thank you so much for bringing
getting rid of this eyesore and bringing value
you just
to my
brought
house.
value to my house.
And when you sell that house for over asking price, now their property value goes up, because that's a comp that they're running.
And if we want to go down the tax rabbit trail, there's all kinds of ways to protect even the LLC income. So I have a SEP IRA now that I set up a while back, and I was able to move any profits into that SEP IRA pre-tax. So I did not pay taxes after closing. So that $90K, let's just use that as an example. You could put a certain portion of that into a SEP IRA and save on taxes. And that's just a beautiful thing, because you've got that money tax-free, right? Tax-free money is not to be underrated, right? Roth IRAs, so I've moved a lot of that now into crypto, right? All of my retirement accounts, 80% of my retirement account are in crypto now.
It's awesome.
The COVID, I took out that withdrawal. I took the max amount I could, which was $100,000 from my 401k. There is not a penalty. Thanks to, COVID, there's no penalty. You do have to pay taxes. Like, I'm going to have to pay taxes actually this eventually. First year, but I'll get those back if I pay back into my 401k. So as much as I hate having to put that stuff back into my 401k, I'm going to throw it back in there. I'll probably get some GBTC, so some crypto, a crypto fund. So I can't buy it directly through their Grayscale. And now Grayscale has like 10 different, they have Link.
They bought Ethereum.
And they have Ethereum. And they have a mixed bag too that I've allocated parts of my portfolio to that allow you to have exposure to everything.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's get back to that second deal. Okay. You were 28, 29?
Yeah. First 28, kid. 29, had Devaney, had a baby.
Working full time. How much do you have in the bank at this point? The $90,000 was profit from the first sale, but that was split across 4 people?
Yeah.
Okay.
Split across 4 people. We put a substantial amount back into advertising.
Yeah.
And the second deal was a deal that I was not in favor of. And that's where I really started to bump heads with some of the guys in this LLC. And I was thinking, okay.
So who's in the LLC at this point?
So we got 4 people. We got 2 brokers, and we got and one of them I really continue to keep in touch with. Great sales guy, killing it right now in real estate.
Yeah.
Patrick O'Donnell, if you're ever watching this podcast, you the man, you secured our first deal, and you know how to work with people and get deals done.
Yeah, good.
So that second deal, I was not in favor of. I thought I didn't think it was a good deal. But you know what? I did it anyway because I wanted to learn. So I'm still in that learning stage, right?
Yep.
Even if we didn't make $90,000 on that first flip, I would have still been happy if we broke even, because we would have had to go through the process and learn
one more time
what we did wrong, what we did right, what we could fix next time, what we could calibrate differently.
Yeah.
And that second deal was actually in Worcester. And that was, so fast forward, we made $5,000 on that deal between 4 of us. So if that was my 10th deal, I would have been pretty pissed off. But this was the second deal we did. I knew going into it, we weren't going to do very well on it. I knew the numbers didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I agreed to do it. again, because of that learning experience.
Yeah. That's the recurring theme that I hear at Bigger Pockets podcast, elsewhere, even in the forums, like on Facebook. It's just like,
oh yeah,
get experience, get a deal done. I mean, there are some times when you're going to do a deal and you're going to lose money, but there might be some tax advantages that kind of help you on the back end anyway. You get experience, you get tax advantages. You might have some networking where you meet a broker and then he helps you secure a next deal, or like just that whole process of going through things. Like experience is everything.
And all those things you just mentioned, right?
Yeah.
People you meet, brokers you work with, other real estate investors that you're getting on the radar with. So maybe you can get wholesale deals from them. They know you're a doer now. They know you know how to do the flips. They know you know how to do it from the end to end, from an ugly house to a staged, beautiful house that people walk through and they're like, dude, this is such a good deal. I need to buy this house. Right. I mean, you don't walk, and there's a lot of crappy flips out there, right? Sure. We always went above bar, but we also were strategic in how we decided to fix things, right? Because if you try to do everything wonderful, you're going to lose money. I guarantee it. Like you got to pick the right stuff to fix.
Right.
So $5,000 on that. You know what? I take that. So we took our 4-way split of that. So, you know, $1,500, whatever. And I said, you know what? I just got to go to university and I got paid $1,500.
That's a really good mindset to have.
Yeah. And that's how I had to think about it, right? Yeah. So we did another deal after that together as a group, and that one we ended up having a septic system that cost us like $70,000. It was a raised septic system. This is in West Boylston, actually, right across from BBC.
Crazy.
And so we made $80,000 on that one.
Wow.
When we split that one.
You had to pay $70,000 for a system.
So yeah, we bought that one right. I was excited about that one. Again, a deal that made sense to me. Yeah. And that was just more fuel for the fire of like, dude, this can work. I can make this happen. This is going to be great.
What year is this?
So this must be
2012,
13, I think, maybe. Yeah, maybe a little before that actually, because then we started our own LLC. I think we started that in 2013.
Gotcha.
So then, started my own LLC, picked up a deal, bank-owned deal. So this is still like real estate market's still kind of weak. People are still a lot of those foreclosures that were from 08 are starting to come on the market now. So this was a house in West Boylston that I purchased through financing, actually. So I leveraged my W-2. So these last few deals that we did, we all did with hard money, which is like
hard money?
10% loan, 12%, a couple points. So, a couple points is like 2% on whatever the total loan is. So if you took out $100,000 loan, $2,000.
Gotcha.
Plus the 10%. So
it's $12,000.
Yep. So $12,000 if you take out the loan for the whole year. But
can you explain like what the benefit of hard money is?
Benefit of hard money, again, going back to like protection. So hard money will never lend you personally, your sole proprietor, they'll never lend you money, right? They're going to lend based on the asset. So they're going to look at your asset. They're going to say, we see the value here. You're paying $100,000 for it. We know the thing is worth 150 at least, and you're buying it at a discount already. We know you have a track record of being able to repair properties. So when we first did hard money, it was really expensive. I think we paid 14% and like 3 points on that money.
Gotcha.
As I progressed and matured, I was able to get the best hard money I got was 10% and 1 point. And so that just allows you to have, so even if they foreclosed on you, say, I don't know, you got sick or something happened in your life, they come after your asset. They never come after your personal.
Which would, in the asset in this case would be the property that you purchased.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So they're secured by that.
At worst, the asset that you bought is gone.
Yep.
At best, you take on a flip without needing all of that cash up front.
Yep. And there's some components to it where like you get a little bit better rate if you're bringing cash in for the rehab. So we would always bring our own cash. We'd pool our cash together for the rehab.
Yep.
And we'd save a little bit of money there. And it was just our money coming out of our pocket. And that obviously makes the lender a little more comfortable too, because they know you got skin in the game and they don't want to take over the asset.
Right.
They
want you to flip it and do the work.
Yeah. They don't want to come in and have to figure out what to do with it. And they're going to buy it and they're going to fix it up. They're not built for that.
Right.
And that happens in rare situations, but never happened to us. But always a nice way to get money quick. I mean, I closed on a house in 2 weeks with hard money, right?
So I was going to ask, what's the timetable between like traditional bank lending and then hard money?
Yeah. So, hard money, Massachusetts makes it a little harder. I think if you're in other states, you can get the money like within 5 days. Yeah. I think the best we did with hard money was like 8 days, 8 business days. We had that cash in our bank.
Sweet.
And we were able to go to the closing table and close on that house.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you can just tell, I mean, especially if you're buying directly from an individual, like, and not a bank owned purchase where it's like, I can have money for you in a week.
And that's a good point, because that's actually huge value for the seller, right? Because a lot of these sellers are people who are, we had out of state people who are like, I'm flying in for a week. I want you to come to my house, meet me there, make me an offer.
Yeah.
And like, you kind of already know you can get a good deal at that point. Like those are the calls you love.
Yeah.
When they're like, hey,
when can you get here? And let's talk about this.
And this was a deal that the second deal I did solo was.
So this is your fifth deal?
Fifth deal. Yeah. So second deal I did solo. This guy's coming in from Ocala, Florida. And he's like, my brothers and sisters are going to be at the house. Our dad died. We're trying to take care of this house. We don't want to deal with it. It's a complete mess. So I knew, like, those are the leads you want to get. Like, you want to find people that are in those types of situations, not to take advantage of them, but they want to get that thing done with, and they want it quick. So that hard money, that quick close is a huge selling point for them. And they don't want to hang around. Like, they're not from around here. They just want to get rid of that house. They want their money, and they want to move on. Yep.
Yeah. So that was your fifth deal. How many deals have you done in total at this point?
So I've done 15 flips, and then I have some rental properties. So actually, one of the rental properties I actually bought at auction, and this is Florida, sight unseen. I had been down to Florida because I had already bought one rental down there, and I knew the neighborhood, I knew the area, I knew that I liked, but I bought it at auction, had a contact down there that helped me facilitate it. Yeah. And then I rehabbed it remotely. So that was a first.
Don't people say this is impossible to buy? Like, they say never buy without seeing, and they say don't, flip out of state.
Yep. And if you say that, you're probably not going to do a lot of deals. Like, you got to have the cojones to be able to pull the trigger on stuff like that. Because, once you know how to identify the value, when you know what the deals are, it's like, you just want to make it happen because you just know it. You know it's a good deal.
Right.
And this is like 2015, Florida. Florida's just starting to come back. Actually, they have a whole different foreclosure process that actually takes a lot longer. So a lot of their foreclosures didn't come out until like 5, 6, 7 years after the whole crash thing. Yeah. So this was a foreclosure, had a ton of, super mess in the house, but beautiful block construction, 2007 build.
It's perfect.
Beautiful. One of my favorite rentals right now. And since I bought that rental, that has appreciated probably about 150%. So I bought it at 140. It's worth about 240 now.
Nice.
So that is just over the span of 5.5, 6 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you're still getting rents every month.
Oh yeah.
And you still have cash flow coming in.
Cash flow, baby. It's all about that cash flow.
Nice. What did the renovation cost?
That renovation. So one of the things that's nice about Florida, right, is
it's cheaper.
Stuff's cheap.
Yeah.
You get the, Hispanic.
I have
people that are hungry.
I have that conversation all the time. Like, we're talking about remodeling one of our bathrooms, and it's like, if I want to hire Joey DeFilippo, I emailed one guy off of Facebook group. He said bathroom renovations are 20 to 35 grand.
Yep.
No, thank you. Let me find a Jose who's really good with tiling, who can take out a bathtub, and who can do my flooring. Yeah. Like, I'm not paying the American rate. Like, there's no incentive on that. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. If I'm doing a roof, I'll probably take on a customer, or I'll probably hire, a company who's maybe they're more expensive, but their reputation is A1 and their work is A1, because a roof is something that you don't want to mess around with. Yeah. But a bathroom or a kitchen, or, there's ways to strategically go about those renovations where you don't necessarily need to hire the more expensive company.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like there's some great, I don't know if you want to segue into this, but one of the things I've found about people who come to this country from the outside versus people who were raised here, like there's such a work ethic there. I've seen real estate investors coming in from India, coming in from all across the globe that I've met, and I'm just so impressed by their diligence, by their attention to detail, by their, like, they see the opportunity when they come to this country.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, Joe Schmoes and people who were raised here, they're like, I don't see opportunity.
I mean, when you wake up and your electricity's on and your water's on and your trash gets picked up and there's not, you know, sewer issues in your neighborhood and people aren't dying from those issues. Like when you go to third world countries and other places, you don't see the opportunity that you see here. So like, it's really easy to wake up and be numb to how good we have it here. And so again, that's why immigrants come here and they work their tails off to success. Yeah. And they better their lineage, right? They give their kids a better opportunity. Now, what their kids do with that, you know, that fire and passion can run out in one generation, right? The book, The Millionaire Next Door.
And it usually does.
It usually does, right? It's this journey to consumerism, which the book, The Millionaire Next Door, talks about. It's like, you know, you'll have that first generation millionaire, and unless this persists, like, keep expenses down, don't consume as much as you do, invest more into assets, you're going to squander whatever you have.
Absolutely.
So how do you kind of kindle that flame of buy more assets and say no more often to consuming?
Yeah. And, you know, I've said to my kids are getting older now. Like, they're like, how much money do we have, Dad? How much money do you make? And I said, well, and how much money do we have? I said, well, you have nothing.
Yeah, that's right.
And as hard as it, I think it's really hard for us.
You
as
have an
parents.
allowance, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Right.
If you do some work and show some value, but like that, I feel like will set my kids up to be better prepared to be responsible for their own well-being, right? Yeah. If you come, and some of the greatest, wealthiest people in the world approach their kids the same way because they know the trap that, you know, if you're given stuff all the time, like you don't know how to work for it. You don't know how to make it work on your own. So my kids are zero. They got nothing and they shouldn't expect anything from me either. Now, will I try to help them in the right direction?
Of course.
Sure. Like I want them to be successful, but I also want them to go through some of that grit.
You have to process. You have to have that grit of like, I'm eating ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and this isn't fun. So let me find a way to create value and create a business. Or create a hustle, create an income, whatever it is, you know?
One of the quotes that's always stuck with me is the only way to grow is through pain, challenge, and suffering. And people need to go through pain, challenge, and suffering. I almost feel like we need to put kids through boot camps that teaches them pain, challenge, and suffering because they have it so well. I mean, we've got iPads for the kids that we let them borrow, but they're not their iPads. But it's just this mentality that's like everything's given to me, and we try to really push hard against that. I mean, even the middle class people of this country like are spoiling their kids rotten because they're giving their kids everything that they ask for.
Here's a cell phone, here's a car, here's an iPad. Don't worry, your kid up college is taken care of. And it's just like, if you don't have the weight of, you know, that financial burden, like what's gonna set you up to kind of take on real world responsibility? You know?
So my schooling never got paid for by my parents. I took out a $500 loan from my dad to pay for school at Mount Wachusett College.
There you go.
And I had to pay him back. And I was doing landscaping, sweating my tail off during the summertime, trying to make ends.
That's a lesson that says like, I need to pay this back. I need to hustle to get it. And handouts aren't free.
Yeah. And also I want to get a degree that I can freaking make some money with and actually be useful. I'm not going to get a degree in psychology. No offense, all you psychology people out there. Maybe you guys are doing well. I know a guy that's doing fine. He got a psychology degree, but guess what? He's not doing psychology. He's a recruiter and he's making bank doing it. He's, you know, I'm against giving your kids, like set them up for success. And every kid's a little bit different.
Right. But, take that approach and kind of tailor it however it fits best, you know, for your kids if you're listening. But I'm totally with you on the, you know, hustle, learn a new skill, landscaping, plowing, whatever. Like I talk about it all the time. When I was 11 and 12, I was snowstorm. I'm knocking on every door, or at least I'm at least shoveling one or two houses every snowstorm. And we're getting video game money to either go to Blockbuster or to, you know, buy a video game or to buy a toy. And like, little things like that where kids are allowed to work, they're allowed to earn. It teaches them entrepreneurship. You know what I mean? It gives them like hands-on money situations where they can like learn. And I think kids aren't exposed to that anymore.
How many kids did you have knock on your door this winter?
0.
Me too.
I've never had a kid knock on my door. I've been here 8 years.
I used to do the same thing. You know what? We could make about $200 on a Saturday morning shoveling driveways. And I remember taking that cash and we'd go and we'd have a late lunch at a restaurant when I was about 10 years old. We'd walk downtown and I would just hand out that money. And
like,
it felt good, man.
Yeah. And then you have a pocket full of cash.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So lessons like that are good. I think and I've even thought about like, how can we create resources for kids or even for parents to teach their kids about, entrepreneurship, money lessons, right?
Absolutely.
So with us, we're giving out an allowance and where half of the allowance gets put away into like investing and saving. And so they'll get that at a later point, but it's teaching them, I can't live on 100% of my money. Right? Because 100% of my money, it's immediately taken away to invest and save. So like if they just take that lesson, and hopefully, my kids, when they get older, they kind of do this, but if they understand that and they live with that, I'm going to live 50% below my means, 60% below my means. They'll never have money problems ever.
No.
And they'll have a nice bank account. They'll have money to do whatever they want to do. If they want to invest, they can invest. If they want to do real estate, but they'll know, we shouldn't consume, we shouldn't buy, a brand new Mercedes-Benz on a lease. We shouldn't buy a crazy apartment and have no cash flow, because when you have no cash flow, you can't do anything unless you have hard money. So, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
You ever play Cashflow the game?
I have played Cashflow the game. So Cashflow, for anyone who doesn't know, it's like Monopoly, but even further, where, there's the middle of the board. It's your rat race. That's your 9 to 5. You get your paycheck, and then, you land on a doodad, and all of a sudden, you have to spend $700 on tires, and all you have is $700. So now you're broke again. So it just, from a board game perspective, teaches you what the rat race is like, and then how you can acquire assets to get out of this inner circle to get to the outer circle where your dreams can be accomplished of, sailing the world in a yacht, or, buying a school for orphans, or, just all these like things. And at that point, you're not depending on that cash flow. The game is pretty cool. It makes you work out like a financial statement where you need to know how much you're making. I remember Giovanni he was pretty upset one game because he pulled 4 cards and each of them were like, you had a baby, congrats. And all of a sudden he's spending like $150 a month on a baby. So kids understand that like babies cost money. So that takes into your cash flow. So just little things like that. And, seeing them acquire properties or acquire stocks and then sell them at a profit, like they start to get it. And like we say cash flow is for kids, but I mean, at this point it's beneficial for adults. Now, one of the things I love about the author of that game, which is Kiyosaki, which had a big influence on me getting into real estate. So what I like about one of the things he said about a game is, right, a game actually shows what that person will do in real life. So you see what that kid will do or what that person will do. And I played with adults who don't understand it, and they think about, well, I don't want to spend, why am I going to put 10 grand down on this property that's only going to give me $100 a month? But people people act the same way they act in real life in a game. And interesting.
And I think that really shows through to like how people manage money, and it helps you teaches you those lessons and gets you out of that rat race. And I've always been, even before I started doing the flips, I was always like, I want rentals. And I talked to a mentor that I had that owned a franchise, a home investors franchise, great guy, Aaron Katz. He was, he's killing it. He was killing it when I started. They were doing tons of deals every year. I think they were doing like 20 deals, average profit of like 70 grand, 70, 80 grand. He would show me his, HUD statements and be like, yeah, I made blah, 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 And it was great. Like I didn't get jealous. I was just like, I want to do that. I want to figure out how to do absolutely. That. And before I joined the franchise, I was talking about rental properties, and he's like, well, how are you going to get rental properties? You got to get enough cash. So you can get enough cash with your W-2. I'm like, well, I can save, 10 grand a year, maybe. And then he's like, well, it's just going to accelerate your ability to buy more rental properties. And so that was always my goal going into it, is building that passive income stream and getting to the point where, you know what, I'm in a career right now. Right. And it's great. And there's parts I love about it. But I also don't care as much. And that's helped me get farther along in my career, because I'm like, I'm not afraid of getting fired. I don't care if you Like, so
I love when I see that in entrepreneurs, because when you get to that point, like, you're unstoppable.
Yeah.
Like, when you really, like, when corporate America doesn't have its leash on your neck where you'll do and say whatever to appease your bosses, like, it just gives you that backbone to be like, nah, I'm good. You're going to have to up those numbers on my salary.
And you're so much more effective too. Like, I actually had a controller, so I had to disclose one of the companies I worked for, because they found out I was flipping on the side, and I actually thought I was going to be fired.
Yeah.
I sat down.
Why would that conflict of interest?
Just because people get, I don't know, people are like, real estate, I don't know, corporate world's weird, right?
That's none of your business.
It isn't any of your business, I know. But you still have to kind of work through the politics of it. So in that instance, and I won't say the name of the company, but the CFO was like, he didn't really like me because of that, for whatever reason.
Sure.
And I walked into his office and I told him what I was doing, why I was doing it. And that was a hard conversation to have, right? That was, I felt I wasn't at a point where I wanted to be fired or wanted to quit. Yeah. This is a few years before actually the disclosure piece, so this was probably in 2013.
Gotcha.
So I wasn't like, I was kind of getting there, but I had to have that conversation. But then another one in 2016, my boss, this is great, man. I did not disclose it, but I come into his office. He's like, I got to talk to you. And he takes out this folder and he's like,
he has all your stuff.
You own properties in Florida, blah, blah, blah. You've been doing this. This is your LLC. This is your website. Like, looks like you're doing pretty well. You've got all these customer recommendations. And why the hell didn't you tell me about this? Because now, and he was a great boss, but he was in a weird situation because he was getting pushed by his upper echelon to be like, what the hell's Joe doing? Like, is he, and I was doing fine at my job, right? My performance reviews were good. I was doing everything I was supposed to do. Yeah. So I had to go sit down with my controller, and this was an encouraging note.
That convo.
And he's like, and I didn't know what he was going to say.
Yeah.
I was also kind of like, hey, it would be great if you just fired me. At the time, there was like 12 months that I would get paid my full salary. So I was like, this is perfect.
Please fire me. I'll give you a reason to fire me.
So anyway, he was like, you know what? I see the value in that, Joe. And like I can see how you've grown in your career because you've done those things. And you have this skill set now that a lot of people don't have, that you apply here in this company. And, he called it like an entrepreneurial bend. So there can be entrepreneurs within W-2 jobs, right? And
who approach their regular job better because they have that entrepreneurial advantage.
Absolutely. You think about things better. You're bolder. So again, like I've had bosses that have been troublesome or whatever, but you know what? Having that little that attitude that kind of doesn't care, and that might sound off, or like as a Christian believer, is that the right attitude to have? So there's definitely a balance there. Yeah. So it's not like, hey, F you, like I'm gonna go do my own thing, but it's like, hey, listen, I'll continue working here, and this is like, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I've always tried to move towards what I enjoy doing in a job.
You get my 40 hours a week, and anything outside of that is like, it's my time.
Yeah. So I was encouraged by what my controller said to me, and he's like, keep doing it, man. Yeah. And not a lot of people would do that. And he saw that value. Whereas the CFO at the time, a few years ago before that, was like, I don't feel comfortable with that. Kind of all like, bent up about it. Yeah. Felt like, he was hearing from other people. And then there were little employees that were like, oh, Joe's making money on the side. That's not okay.
Yeah, that happens. That happened obviously in my job. Like, people knew I had a side business, shooting weddings, shooting corporate stuff. And then, that chatter kind of gets back to the office, and then it's all right, well, let's monitor this employee's internet history. And then that kind of happens, and then they're looking for you to, mess up on the job so they can write you up, and then they can eventually push you out the door. Yep. And so if you do have a side hustle, and you have a main job, you need to kind of be true to your main job, make sure your performance and productivity is good to go. But I mean, if you want to get out, save up 6 months expenses, and
absolutely,
like, fly away, like, start the entrepreneur journey.
Yeah.
And like, there's no, for me, success is different for everybody, but like, just to be able to wake up whenever I want, like, that's wonderful. You know what I mean? Like, we had my daughter, and when you have a newborn or whatever, like you wake up a couple times throughout the night, and then you still have, like, you know how it goes. You still have to go to work. You're tired. Yep. Your wife is at home. She's super tired, and she's now in a position where she has to kind of endure through a tough season of that, and you're stuck in a cubicle or in an office, and it's just like, well, this kind of sucks. And I'd feel a lot more empowered if I could just make money from home and make my own schedule. So there's just so much freedom in that, which is, again, why I love entrepreneurship, and I love what money can do for us, because having money and having resources allows you to say no to people, and it allows you to do what you want. Yeah. And you can't put a price on that. Yep. And so, yeah,
I hear you, man. And whether you go full blown entrepreneur or like me, I'm kind of the hybrid, but
you're doing well, man.
I feel like, it could have gone a couple different ways. Sure. And it would have been hard if I had to just do real estate, I guess, especially earlier on. Yeah. But I'm in a position where, maybe I'll keep working if I can keep working up. But if I get to a point where I'm like, I think I'll go do something else. Yeah. Like I'm putting myself in a position to be totally ready to do that. Right. Or totally live off of the residual income from properties, and then decide, hey, maybe then there's no pressure to, I can go find deals. I can go do it, but it's not like I have this pressure to provide immediately, because I've got a nice little runway that I can work off of.
That's exactly why I tell people who have their side hustle and they're kind of, they want to make that leap. Well, you need to make sure that for 6 months you can kind of not close any, like what was your first flip? 6 months, 7 months? Yeah. Right. You had money coming in, but you still had to pay for marketing. So like, use that W-2 money, fund your business, and make sure you can handle your own expenses. And that gives you leeway to, take on risk and close some business. Yeah.
One other point on that, I feel like too, there's not a right, wrong, or indifferent way to do it. I think that one of the things that I've seen, and I'm still okay with my W-2 job, because as I've moved into a management role over the last 5 years, and it's helped me have more of that flexibility that I didn't have when I started a job. Right. So like when we did have I had a son about 4.5 years ago. Yeah. And I had that flexibility, even though I was in a W-2 job. Like I had paternity, and I had flexibility to be at home and to do things, which isn't as easy when you're earlier on in your career. So I feel like, for me at least, it was the best of both worlds, that I can have that health insurance, have that salary coming in, and then as you get farther up in management, you're doing less of the work. You're managing the work, but you're able to have more of a side role in it, and it's more reliant on your ability to influence within the company versus typing and doing stuff. So I think that has been one of the surprises, I guess, with staying in a W-2 job. It's still been good for me, and that doesn't mean it's always going to be good. I just moved into a new job, and there's all kinds of risks that go in with that, right? So it's like I might end up, and who knows, you might get laid off, but you're ready. You're ready for it.
Right. Let's talk about maybe your worst deal, or your worst surprise, and how you kind of handled that.
So I think one of the things, a few years ago, we did 3 deals in the year. All those deals were very profitable. We also had a 3-year-old. So I felt like working a full-time job and doing that took a big strain on the family front. And I didn't even realize it. I was just in my own silo. I didn't even notice
3 deals.
The wife.
Yeah, dude, I've done that.
She was dying on the vine, and I'm here hustling, bustling. But I lost that time. So there's this balance that I had to kind of engage in. So even though there weren't any bad deals, although the last deal was very hard. Yeah. Very challenging rehab, most challenging rehab, had the most issues with contractors. And you're going to come across those deals. They just, they suck. I also got my license to build, so I could pull my own permits. And that was good in some ways. But in this case, man, I was the town of Holliston was on my, and it was not in a way that was like, oh, you're not doing this rehab right. It was just all this red tape I had to get through, and it was frustrating.
Yeah.
And I had contractors. That was probably the worst time, because I also had like my electrician got super pissed off at me. We had like a falling out. I had some dude come to the house to pick up some drywall, because I was trying to get rid of it. I didn't have any room in my dumpster.
Yeah.
So I put on like free drywall. So tip, don't ever give anything away for free on Craigslist. Sell it for $1, because this guy came, and I wasn't there. I came after this happened. He had the drywall drop on his leg when he was trying to put it in his truck. And he was swearing at my contractor, the main contractor I had when I got there. And he's like, who's the owner? Who's the guy responsible for this? And I'm pulling up to this, right? And I'm like, I'm the guy. My name's on that door as the general contractor responsible for the permitting on this. And he could sue me. And, well, the LLC would protect me a little bit, but still be a pain in the butt, man. So going through that, I was just like, man, this is a lot of work. And I don't need it. Yeah. I didn't need it at that point. That was 2018. But I'd gone through like a transformation. I had been through, like, I'd done my own huge marketing campaign, direct mail, Facebook advertising, IP address targeting. Like, I went through the whole Monty, texting, and I had more deals that I could handle. And I really, at that point, probably that was the big pivot point that could have changed things. I could have moved full time into real estate at that point. And it didn't happen. For, I guess personal reasons, that like there were decisions we made as a family. Just at that time, it wasn't going to be good for us. And I'm happy with that. I don't have any regrets about that. But I just think everybody's at different points in life, and everybody has different pivot points. I think the benefit of that pivot point was, I'm ready to go. I could do this, man. Like, the second deal we did that year was the easiest deal I ever did. It was a house in Westminster. It was a short sale. I snagged it. I don't remember all the numbers on it, but okay, get this, man. I got into it for like $200,000. I wholesaled it to another investor. $40,000 profit. And we double closed on it. So I went to the closing table with hard money that I only had to use for one day. I paid 2 points on the $200,000 loan, so $4,000. I sold it to him for $245 or something like that, and I was out. And I walked away with a check for $40,000.
That's like a wholesale cocaine sale, right?
I was like, that was the easiest flip I've ever done,
and it's quick.
It was beautiful.
How long did it take you to close a short sale?
This one actually went relatively quick. So a
couple weeks.
No, a little bit longer than that. So we did have to work with the bank, and there were some, like, I had to prove that the house
bank
was
owned the property.
The bank owned the property. Perfect. So I had to go through this like process with them to prove that the house was worth such and such that we were offering, and then the bank comes in and they write down their loan. So I think the loan value was like $270 or whatever. So they take a cut. They lose that $70,000, and you pay off the $200,000. So that's the short sale process. Is they're agreeing to that price that you need to purchase it at. So that was a beautiful deal. And I wish at that point I could have just gone. I was thinking about pivoting to just doing wholesale deals, just tying up the deals. Because once you get that experience, and you know how it works, like,
you have the network,
and you're in a hot market, it's better to wholesale.
I see people, wholesalers, I mean, you can do 10 to 20 grand, and you're not swinging a hammer, you're not, replacing a $70,000 septic, you're not repairing roofs, like, there's no surprises, you're not dealing with any of that, you're just finding someone who can take this off your hands.
Absolutely.
Who will then take care of all that stuff. That's almost like more of a stress-free approach.
It is.
So, like, what would you need to be, I guess, doing those consistently?
So you need to have that marketing machine going, and you know about marketing, right? You could probably talk to me more about how to market effectively, and I could probably learn a lot from you. But I was just getting into like targeting IP. Like, a lot of people don't do this stuff, right? Like, there's so many investors out there who don't go through the extra steps of finding those people who need to sell their house. So one of the things I did as part of that marketing campaign is I've driven probably a couple thousand miles.
Driving for dollars.
Driving for dollars, baby.
Can you explain what driving for dollars is?
Driving for dollars is just, I'm going to take my car, I'm going to go in the neighborhood, I'm going to use an app, and I'm going to tag houses that look like they need repairs. I'd especially do it in the wintertime, see places that didn't get plowed.
Yep.
So I knew they were vacant. And I would yeah, and I'd mail those houses, and I'd mail them every month, every month. And sometimes people would get my letters and be like, hey, I've had your letter for like a year, and I keep seeing that you're mailing me, and now I want to talk to you about it. So some of that stuff paid off later,
fall right in your
but
lap.
that machine is what's really important to get going. So I'm not advertising now, but if I were to, it takes, like, you got to feed the funnel.
Yeah.
And once you do, it's like those things start popping, and you get that phone line all set up and ready to go. And this is now I started hiring people out. So I hired 2 guys to drive around and tag houses. And then I hired a call center to answer my calls.
Perfect.
So they would take care of that initial phase.
Because you're at work.
Yep. Which was nice. So then that let off some of that effort that I needed to put in. And once, like, I had a really good call center, so they knew the questions to ask. So somebody calls, hey, how's it going? Let's get to the, like, just building rapport with people, right? Making them feel comfortable first, but then getting to, like, hey, so we're not a real estate brokerage. We're not going to be able to list your house for such and such. Like, we are discount buyers.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you? Yes. Okay. What are you looking for your house? So we switched to actually asking people what they wanted for their house before I would go out and meet with these people, because I spent a lot of time, and it was well spent time, because it taught me to be a better sales guy, and it taught me to close deals.
Right.
But I spent a ton of time going around to houses that probably weren't like leads that ended up working out, but I'd sit at the kitchen table with them and I'd be like, oh, that's
you're pre-qualifying.
Yeah. Oh, that's pictures of your family, and I talk to them and have that whole sales process. Yeah. But I wanted to get the deals that were on fire. So I would make sure that was my filtering process, is those guys would filter that deal, make sure it was a good deal.
Check these boxes.
And then I would call them again, and I would further, kind of interrogate and make sure they were serious about it. And, a lot of people are tire kickers. A lot of people too don't understand how we work as buyers. So helping them, educate them, but then being like, leaving it up to them. Hey, do you want to invite me out to your house now? Yeah. Like, I'm not going to give you retail. Yeah. Do you want to invite me out to your house? If they say yes after you go through that process, it's worth your time to go out there. Right. And not all of those deals ended up working out, but I'd say 1 in 10 of them would.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because your average profit on a deal like that is...
So my minimum that I would make for a flip, I would never buy a house that I didn't think I could make at least 50 grand on.
That's awesome.
So, some of those houses I made a lot more than that. Some of those houses I made a little bit less. Yeah. I think the least amount was the 5 grand with the partners. The first deal I did as a solo LLC, I made 35 grand on.
Sweet.
But it was worth it, because again, I was still in that learning stage, still in that figuring it out. And then I knew, like, okay, next time I'm not gonna paint the whole house. I'm not gonna do the roof. I'm not gonna do because like, that's not worth putting. You look at that house and you got to examine what needs to get done, and that's usually floors. That's usually paint. That's usually kitchen. That's usually bathrooms. Roof, maybe some external stuff, but depending on how hot the market is, like right now we're in a super hot market.
Yeah, anything.
So I wouldn't do very much. Yeah. Like, it's not worth it. You're throwing good money at nothing, right? You're providing no value, really. Yeah. So it was a fun, it's an adventure, right? And it's something I can tell my kids about. It's something I can look back on. And it's not something I've completely written off. Like, I still have the LLC set up. I still get deals. I still get calls every once in a while. I still get inquiries. I still have a website that's up, but I'm just not doing active marketing. Right. But you know what? I'm ready to do it whenever I need to. I can turn on that marketing machine, and I know exactly what I need to get into. Yeah. I'll start IP targeting. So that's your IP address, whatever you're using as your computer has an IP address, and I'm going to target that address, and it's cheap. It's like 25 cents to hit an IP and to give them an advertisement, and they just have to click on a banner and they're at your website. And it's one of the smartest, most recent ways really to make some decent money through advertising, like just to reach a broad audience of people.
Right. That's awesome. Where do you think the market will be in a year, 2 years, 5 years? We're at this point where, continues to soar and soar and soar. Like, what do you think is next?
You asking me about Massachusetts?
Mass and generally everywhere else.
So I got to talk about like real estate's always local, right? That's my motto, because there's always great places to buy properties. I flew down to Alabama in August. Alabama's a great place right now. Decatur, Huntsville, those are Birmingham. Those are great markets because Polaris, Toyota, Amazon hubs, like people are moving there, and like companies are going there. Right. And those are the kinds of rentals you want. Like you want those types of middle class sort of people who are just looking to rent. So that's a good market to be in. Parts of Florida are great to be in right now. Massachusetts, I'm up in the air about. So we have so few houses here. There's just so few, and there's so much red tape to get through to build a house here. It's so much more expensive to build houses here. Right. So there's just a limited supply of inventory. So that's why house prices are going crazy right now. Because there's like one house for every 10 people who are looking for a house right now. Yeah. And that's what's driving the prices up right now. Like you've been to an open house recently? I haven't, but I've been seeing there's 50 people. I was at an open house the other day. There's 12 offers. Yeah. And the nice thing about being a real estate agent is I can show myself a house, right? I can just be like, hey, I'm going to go check this house out. Put MLS, hey, I'm agent Joey. I'm going to go see this house at 5 o'clock. But this other house I went to, there were like 20 people there. There were people that were switching like appointments, and it was just like, it was insane. So I think... It's crazy. Do I think you can still get a good deal? Yeah, but I'm kind of like... I'm not hopeful that I'll find like that there's really going to be anything until that inventory and supply changes. Yeah. When do you think the market cools down? Do you foresee it happening? Interest rates go up, which I don't think is going to happen. I think cheap money is good for government, right? Crypto, all that, fiat money is just, we just printed another 1.9 billion and now about another 4 or 3 billion or trillion. Right. Yeah. We got to talk trillions, right? When we talk about government, because that's what they use. They use the trillions. And like 10 years ago, we didn't even really know what $1 trillion was. And now it's just thrown out left and right. It's insane. But that is devaluing our currency, right? The thing I like about real estate, similar to crypto, it's a finite resource, right? So you get into something that's been built. Someone's had to put their time, effort, sweat into their building energy. The lumber, nailing things, building countertops, building cabinets. That is going to inflate with the currency. So you're not going to lose money on a house unless there's just this mass exodus from a state. Right. And then there's just too much supply. But you're going to keep your wealth incubated when you buy real estate. Yeah. And because there's just not enough real estate to go around. Right. And again, all those raw materials. You can almost think about buying a house as investing in commodities, because you're buying the lumber. Yeah. You're buying the plaster. You're buying the wood flooring. Like those things lumber prices are crazy right now. Absolutely. Yeah. Crazy. I don't know if it was you that posted that picture of the truck that had like 4 2x4s on it. It was like $800. Like how long ago? And now that same lumber is what, like a few grand? Right. Like it's ridiculous. Yes, nuts. Yeah. So for people interested, where can they find you on social? So I'm on Facebook, Joey DeFilippo. I have a pseudonym on Twitter, so you can't find me there because I'm worried about the government coming and finding me. But I have a website, cashbuyerma.com. Got it. Freedom Trail Properties is probably the easier way to do that. So if you look up Freedom Trail Properties LLC, you'll find me, and you'll find the website, and you'll find my landing page for people who are selling their house there. If you're a new real estate investor and you're like I'm not sure if this is a deal, like send it to me or show it to me. We can partner on it. You get money. You get to learn from what I have learned. Yep. I'll bring the money to the table. I'll buy the house. I'll, or whatever. Maybe you end up buying the house, but I'll help you. I'll help you with it as long as I can have I need to be a part of the deal, part of the equity partnership on it. And if it's a good deal, man, you're gonna make it work. Like finding the good deals is the hardest part. Absolutely. I agree. Awesome. Joey, thank you for your friendship. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. And
yeah, I look forward to, seeing what you do in the next few years.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Ben.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, dude.